Hello everyone, and welcome back to another whiteboard video. Today I want to go over just quickly how you can problem solve feeling your biceps in a pull down. Now, this also is going to apply to any kind of row that you're going to do, so keep that in mind. Now, from a sort of big picture perspective, what is really the issue with feeling your biceps in a pull down? Well, it's not necessarily like it's a bad thing, and in fact, it's kind of a feature of any pulling motion, right? Your biceps have to contract when you're pulling something. But the issue is really feeling too much of that relative to the things that you want to feel, like your lats, your upper back, whatever it happens to be. And so fundamentally, this is an issue of force, and specifically the relationship between the resistance we're using and our joints. So here's what I mean. If we're doing a pull down and, so we're doing something sort of not totally overhead, not in front of us, somewhere in between, we might be using a cable or something that has a resistance that looks like this. And perhaps from top to bottom, that cable kind of looks something like that. And so what you'll notice I did in either one of these cases is I drew the resistance as if it were an extension of the forearm, right? Because the upper arm, that thing shifted positions, but the forearm basically just tracked perfectly in line with the cable. So why did I do that? Well, if we pick this image over here, what we can do to actually see what the impact of any force is on our joints is we can just extend the force this way. And what you'll notice what happens when I do that is now there's a certain distance from this joint, i.e. the shoulder joint, and a certain distance from the elbow. But what you'll notice is that this whole long dotted line is pretty substantial relative to what the line for the elbow would be. There's almost no line, right? Because the line of force is going right through the joint, right? So why is it, for example, that you can hold a ton of weight if it's just stacked directly over your wrist, assuming the bottom of your arm is supported? Imagine you just stacked a really heavy bar here. Well, it'll be easy to hold because it's going right through the joint, right? There's not a lot of force on the joint. So in the same sense, if the resistance goes through the joint, there's going to be low force at that specific pivot point. But what happens when we don't do this in a pull down? Well, that's when we really start to feel things we don't necessarily want to feel. So let's say in the top position, we're still good, but in the bottom position, for whatever reason, let's just assume that the resistance ends up via either your motion or the way that you have the resistance set up so that it's kind of pulling more at this angle, right? A little bit more forward. And that could be because you're maybe pulling your hand to your shoulder. Maybe the resistance is a little bit lower than you should have it. Maybe you're moving your trunk throughout the motion so something is occurring. Whatever, this is the end outcome. So if I do that same thing and I extend this line backward, right, roughly, actually that wasn't particularly good, but let's just assume that like this is the actual line, right, just to make a point of it. What now happens is this line moves out of being parallel with the forearm. So if I were to draw my dotted lines again, hopefully you can see that. There's dotted line 1, and there's dotted line 2 now to the elbow joint. So from a distance perspective, you can actually see now that this resistance is even farther from the elbow than it is to the shoulder, right? i.e. this dotted line bigger than this dotted line. So what does that mean? What is the outcome of that? It means more force on the elbow, and as a consequence, more force on the biceps. So really the problem or the issue in this context is that the force is going through the upper arm so that we have to bend our elbow against it. It's not the fault of the exercise, the resistance, your mind-muscle connection. It's just the fact that what the resistance is asking of you, whether it's because of your execution or the setup, is it's asking you to actually bend your elbow against the resistance. So what is the sort of golden rule, the golden takeaway here? Keep the resistance parallel to the forearm if you want to minimize forces on the elbow, right? You would do the exact opposite if you wanted to load the elbow, load the biceps in something like a curl, right? You would try to maximize forces on the elbow, right? And not keep it parallel to the forearm. So I hope this was helpful. It's a little bit more difficult to see in some motions as compared to others. It's easiest to see with cable pulling motions. But as a general rule, try to imagine what you're pulling against is falling directly through your forearm, and as a consequence will not recruit your biceps and those kinds of things that you don't want if you don't want them in a pull down or a row. So I hope this helps. If you want to learn more from me, you can join my free online biomechanics community. No credit card, nothing required. click the link in the description below, and I hope to see you there, and I hope to be able to answer your questions in there. Are you someone that wants to be able to target any muscle in your body when you're lifting, but you also don't give a shit about complicated anatomy and biomechanics? If you are, then this is the perfect ebook for you. The Target Any Muscle ebook is not really an ebook. It's more like a lifetime cheat sheet guide to lifting. You need a total of 0 understanding of anatomy and biomechanics to understand this material. And that's because every chapter is full of tons of different diagrams and very visual, simple explanations about how to set up an exercise for any muscle. In addition, every chapter functions as a standalone guide, so you can simply click on the table of contents and navigate to any muscle group that you're training on any given day. Every single chapter includes visuals of how to stretch any muscle, how to shorten any muscle, how to load any muscle, and then how to stabilize your body so that you can train that muscle appropriately. And in addition, at the end of every chapter, there's a training FAQ to address commonly asked questions and a full video lecture summarizing each chapter with me and my skeleton model to demonstrate. This is meant to function as a cheat sheet for life. This should be the last product that you ever purchase about how to lift. I hope you all enjoy the guide. Happy gains.